Hello, and welcome to some Dodge family history. This is where I present information and research on my ancestors who served in the military during the early 20th century. Today, I will be presenting on the military service of Private David Nemetzky, who served in the Hospital Corps from his re-enlistment in April of 1914 through April of 1917. We will use records that are available online, such as the bi-monthly muster rolls on Family Search and the morning reports on Fold 3, as well as National Archives records, such as special orders and correspondence from the Adjutant General's office, to tell the story of this chapter of his military service. This revised presentation contains some additional information from the records found in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., as well as special orders from the Western Department from 1914 through 1917 that are now available online. Following his honorable discharge on March 24, 1914, David Nemetzky remained in California and requested permission to re-enlist in the Army. On April 8, 1914, a telegram was sent from the recruiting office at San Francisco to the Adjutant General's office, which reads, David Nemetzky, Hospital Corps, discharged March 24th last, character excellent, weight 117, height 63/4, clerk, desired this party. He was approved for re-enlistment and received at Fort McDowell on April 11, 1914. Upon his re-enlistment, he was assigned to the 8th Company General Service Infantry at Fort McDowell. 2 days later, he was assigned to the General Service Infantry recruiting duty at 660 Market Street in San Francisco. Private Nemetzky did not like recruiting duty. On May 4, 1914, he prepared and submitted a request for transfer to the Hospital Corps at the Post Hospital, Presidio of San Francisco, California. He stated that he was unsuited to recruiting duty and he wanted to take the examination for Sergeant, Hospital Corps. He listed his previous military experience and submitted his request through military channels. His request was approved, and on May 16, 1914, Special Order 115 from the War Department was issued, reading, Private David Nemetzky, General Service Infantry Recruiting Station, 660 Market Street, San Francisco, California, is transferred to the Hospital Corps and will be directed to report to the commanding officer, Presidio of San Francisco, California, for duty. He joined the Hospital Corps at the Presidio of San Francisco on May 23, 1914. It wasn't long before he was on detached service. On May 29, 1914, Special Order 122 was issued by the Western Department, ordering Private Nemetzky to report to the U.S. Army Transport Buford, which was to leave port around June 15th for various ports in Alaska. He was to be part of the Hospital Corps detachment aboard the Buford to provide any medical assistance as needed to those who would be aboard. From the Army and Navy Journal from June 27, 1914, the Army Transport Buford was scheduled to leave Seattle, Washington, June 25th. The vessel arrives in St. Michael July 5th, departing from there on July 9th. It reaches Nome the following day, leaving on July 12th and arriving at Valdez July 18th. It reaches Fort William H. Seward July 22nd, leaves there July 24th, and reaches San Francisco July 30th. On this trip north, the transport is taking the battalion of the 14th Infantry to relieve the 30th Infantry. Following the return of the Buford to San Francisco, Private Nemetzky's detached service was extended per Special Order 170 issued by the Western Department on July 27, 1914. The Buford was ordered to sail to Monterey and San Diego, California. The Buford sailed from San Francisco on August 1, 1914. From the Army and Navy Journal dated August 1, 1914, we read, Troops A, B, K, and M, 1st Cavalry, will sail from Monterey on the transport Buford to San Diego, California. The Buford left San Diego on August 5, 1914, with several companies of the Coast Artillery aboard, bound for San Francisco. The Buford returned to San Francisco on August 7, 1914, and Private Nemetzky was relieved from temporary duty on the 16th. In October of 1914, Private Nemetzky was attached to the 30th Infantry Regiment as part of the Sanitary Personnel Detachment. The 30th Infantry Regiment were stationed at the Presidio of San Francisco and in the process of preparing to be transferred to Plattsburgh Barracks in New York. The sanitary personnel were in charge of the health, medical treatment, and sanitary conditions of the encampment, while the 30th Infantry Regiment was stationed in San Francisco and preparing for embarkation for their new headquarters. The 30th Infantry Regiment remained at the Presidio of San Francisco until they sailed for New York on Christmas Eve, 1914. The bi-monthly muster roll for the field, staff, and band of the 30th Infantry Regiment for September and October 1914 record the hospital personnel that were assigned to sanitary personnel duty. The next muster roll for November and December of 1914 indicate that the sanitary personnel were dropped from the regiment roll upon the regiment's departure from San Francisco. While on detached service with the 30th Infantry Regiment, Private Nemetzky was promoted for the third time to Private First Class on October 13, 1914. 1915 continued with more detached service for Private Nemetzky. On March 2, 1915, he received orders to help present an exhibit on the Army's medical department at the San Francisco Exposition. The San Francisco Exposition was nearly a year-long celebration from February through December of 1915, celebrating many things, including the opening of the Panama Canal, as well as how far San Francisco had come from the devastation of the 1906 earthquake. In April of 1915, Private Nemetzky was on detached service with Company F, 2nd Battalion Engineers, as part of the Sanitary Personnel Attachment. On May 15, 1915, Special Order 111 from the Western Department was issued, which ordered Private First Class Nemetzky to be sent without delay to report to the General Superintendent, Army Transport Service, this city, San Francisco, for duty on the Transport Logan. He joined the Logan on May 19, 1915, as part of the Hospital Corps staff. The Logan left San Francisco on June 5, 1915, bound for the Philippine Islands, arriving at the port in Manila on July 4th. The Logan began her return trip to the States, leaving Manila on July 15th and arriving back in San Francisco on August 12th. Private First Class Nemetzky returned to duty at the Presidio of San Francisco on August 26, 1915. In October of 1915, he was again on detached service, this time as part of the sanitary personnel assigned to the 24th Infantry Regiment. The 24th Infantry Regiment had returned from the Philippines and were stationed at the Presidio. The 24th Infantry Regiment would remain at the Presidio until February of 1916, when they were transferred to Fort D.A. Russell, Wyoming. All these experiences on detached service, along with his previous service in the Hospital Corps, prepared Private First Class Nemetzky for promotion. On April 8, 1916, Special Order 78 was issued from Headquarters, Western Department, for a board of 3 medical officers to be convened to conduct an examination of a certain number of enlisted men of the Hospital Corps for promotion to the rank of sergeant. Private First Class Nemetzky was one of those under consideration for promotion. A complete handbook for the Hospital Corps of the U.S. Army indicates the requirements for being appointed to the rank of sergeant. They must pass an examination as to physical condition, character and habits, and general aptitude, and in the principles of arithmetic, in orthography and penmanship, in materia medica and pharmacy, care of sick and ward management, minor surgery and first aid, elementary hygiene, cooking and mess management, Army regulations, clerical work, and a hospital corps drill. He passed these examinations and was promoted to the rank of sergeant on May 22, 1916. Sergeant Nemetzky was transferred from the Presidio of San Francisco to Fort Baker, California, just north across the bay from the Presidio, on June 26, 1916. Prior to this transfer, and prior to his promotion, on March 6, 1916, his congressman, Walter Chandler, submitted a letter on his behalf requesting a transfer for David Nemetzky back to his station in or around New York City. The original letter from Private First Class Nemetzky no longer exists, so the reasons and details of his request are unknown. The Adjutant General responded to Mr. Chandler's request and explained that Private Nemetzky had already served at several posts throughout the East, and that he had only been stationed at the Presidio of San Francisco since May of 1914. His request for a transfer back east was denied. Another transfer would be soon forthcoming, however, for Sergeant Nemetzky. On August 12, 1916, he was transferred to the Camp of Instruction for Recruits, Medical Department, Fort Bliss, Texas. He was ordered to report fully equipped for field service. And as a side note, the Hospital Corps was incorporated into and became the Medical Department during 1916. While at Fort Bliss, Texas, he was involved in a motor vehicle accident. The El Paso Times from October 28, 1916 reports, 2 soldiers were seriously hurt and 1 soldier slightly injured yesterday morning at 11:50 when an ambulance truck from the Hospital Corps at Fort Bliss collided with an eastbound Fort Bliss streetcar at Boulevard and Campbell Streets. Sergeant A. Maynard, Sergeant David Nemetzky, and Private D. Ingram, all of the Medical Corps, were hurled from the machine when the collision occurred. They were taken to the base hospital at Fort Bliss. Sergeant Nemetzky, who was driving the truck, was badly bruised about the body. 2 ribs possibly are broken. Sergeant Maynard sustained several cuts about the face and head and possible internal injuries. Private Ingram received a cut on the lip and was bruised about the face and head. Witnesses say the ambulance truck was going at a good rate of speed on Montana Street and that Sergeant Minsky was unable to turn out when he saw the streetcar as he turned into Campbell Street. The automobile was knocked about 10 feet. The engine of the car was demolished. Two windows in the streetcar were broken. The bi-monthly muster for September and October of 1916 indicate that Sergeant Nemetzky was in the hospital until October 29, 1916. One record that I found on my trip to the National Archives in 2024 was the return of the enlisted personnel of the medical department for the casual camp for enlisted men, Camp Fort Bliss, Texas, from August 1916 through February of 1917. This was a surprise find, especially since the bi-monthly muster for the Camp of Instruction for Recruits, Medical Department, Camp Fort Bliss, Texas, for January and February 1917 no longer exists, and is one of the few bi-monthly musters that was not microfilmed. At the end of 1916, Sergeant Nemetzky received orders for transfer to Base Hospital No. 5 at Nogales, Arizona. He left Camp Fort Bliss on February 6, 1917, and reported at Base Hospital No. 5 on February 8th. His time at Nogales would be short, however, as he was transferred back to the Presidio of San Francisco on April 24, 1917. He reported there 2 days later, on April 26, and was part of the Medical Department Casual Detachment. On May 10, 1917, he was assigned to duty back at the Presidio San Francisco. After being denied a request for transfer to go back east a year earlier, he had been transferred 4 times in 1 year, from the Presidio to Fort Baker to Fort Bliss to Nogales, and ending up back at the Presidio San Francisco. Sergeant Nemetzky's previous enlistments were for 3 years each. This enlistment, however, appears to have been for 7 years, as he was not discharged in April of 1917. As it was, the United States had entered World War I on April 6, 1917, and no doubt his services and experience would be needed. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and found it informative. The preservation of the bi-monthly muster rolls and special orders definitely helped paint a picture of Sergeant Nemetzky's service in the Army and helped replace much of the information that was lost when his 201 file was destroyed in 1973. In addition, the Adjutant General's Office correspondence through 1916 also gave us additional insights into his service and his desires to stay in the hospital corps, later the medical department, as well as his hope to return back east. Along with this, we see the timeline of his promotions from private to private first class to sergeant, showing his growth and maturity during this time. The next presentation will look at his military service in the medical department from 1917 to his honorable discharge in August of 1919. Thank you.